Good morning. I would like to go ahead and get this meeting called to order. Before I do that, though, I would like to take a moment to welcome Jim Sedgwick, who's our newest member of the Tirz 3. Welcome him aboard. We're glad that he's here. So with that, Mrs. Huerta, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Everett Roy.
Present.
Board members Roland Barrera.
Here.
Rudy Garza.
Here.
Paulette Guajardo. Ms. Guajardo? I'll circle back to her in a little bit. Gail Hernandez?
Here.
I'm present.
Oh, good, okay. Ms. Guajardo is here
Thank
also.
you. Sorry.
Okay. Michael Hunter?
Here.
Susan Hutchison? Ms. Hutchison? Okay, I don't hear her yet. Joe McComb?
Here.
Ben Molina will be absent for this meeting. Jim Sedgwick?
Here.
Greg Smith?
Here.
Carolyn Vaughn?
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Mrs. Huerta, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any public comment? Was
No,
there any?
sir. We have not received public comments for this meeting.
Okay. Seeing that there's no public comment, I would like to go ahead and move to the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you. And next we have the financial report.
Ms. Casas? Is she there?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah.
we can't, now we can hear you.
Okay, so we've got the financial position for the 5 months ended February 29. We have our beginning fund balance of 10/1/2019 of $4,889,889. We have a net change for the period of $1,152,693, giving us an ending fund balance at 2/29/2020 of $6,042,582. Now, the commitments remaining to be paid are at $5,042,386. So that leaves us a balance available for commitments of $1,196. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Seeing that there's no questions, there's no action required for this item. The next item on the agenda is a presentation item, which is the Downtown Reinvestment Zone Number 3 COVID-19 Impacts and Business Survey.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Barrera, Mason, Executive Director of the Downtown Management District. At our last board meeting, you all asked for us to do some planning work related to COVID-19, the impacts and the impacts to our downtown businesses. So I want to go ahead and report back to you at this time what we've done in that interim period and kind of where it is that we look to be going in the future. So next slide. We have been participating in weekly conference calls and webinars. The International Downtown Association has a weekly CEO call as well as different subject matter oriented calls. This is a slide I wanted to share with you that we got from the National Development Council, who's also having different informational sessions. And this for us really helps just us orient to the different phases that we're going to be going through here as we work on this recovery and really getting through the initial steps and to the recovery phase. So they broke it down into 3 phases. The first one being survival and rescue, the second phase being stabilization, and the third phase being recovery and rebuilding. The survival and rescue, I think, had a little bit more of the stabilization elements. So we're seeing those kind of merging a little bit more, I think, than we initially anticipated, especially because the federal relief programs have come online so quickly and been depleted so quickly. And so, you know, we do have a lot of people who are trying to understand this completely new situation. But we think that this framework will help us kind of identify where we need to plan our work. So I wanted to share that with you all so that you can kind of understand our philosophy and how we're going to present our information here. Next slide. So in the immediate phase one, the right when you know, COVID-19 hit and we understood what we were a little bit better of what we were dealing with. I remember very distinctly, it was one Thursday we thought we were going to have the St. Patrick's Day Festival. We realized that was not going to be a responsible thing to do. And then by the next Tuesday, our team had taken the initiative of putting together a list of downtown restaurants that had to go available. So we launched a support local order takeout campaign. This was before any of the governor actually closed any restaurants. We were the first ones that had a list, so I was pretty proud of our team for kind of pulling that together so quickly. We've continued to manage this program, Support Local. We actually grew it into a curbside program, working with the city, with traffic engineering, city manager's office. Everyone was very helpful. We created some signs that are very distinct. They're curbside A-frame signs. So even if you're driving through the downtown, it might be a reminder that you can order from one of our businesses. It has the phone number on there, the name of the business, the hours of operation. And so go downtowncc.com/supportlocal is where we keep that list updated daily of who has curbside options currently. We then went to look at our website resources. There was a lot of information coming out on the front end, and so we wanted to really curate the information that we shared with our businesses. We didn't want to be another shouting voice because there was a lot of noise there on the front end. So we took a little bit more of a measured approach to that. But what we have on our website right now are some good resources for our businesses. Really, I mean, the SBA, the PPP program were for the time period. The premier items, we now have our Lift Fund program, so we provide a link to that as well. But that's how we're trying to get information out to our businesses. We switched our events to virtual, so we had virtual art walk take the place of regular art walk. We also had a virtual bridge walk. On virtual art walk, we used our social media accounts to engage Instagram stories, Facebook stories, linking to the websites of the vendors. We're also seeing a big push. Basically, an online presence is now your front door presence. We've known that for a long time. When it comes to retail, when it comes to restaurants, online presence was important, but we are now seeing this is definitely changing the way that we do business in this capacity, and everyone is pretty much in agreement that this is going to be how things work moving forward. So we're also working with our businesses right now. We've conducted I guess kind of an audit of everyone's online presences, and we're going to be working with them to make sure that they have a good, vibrant, clear presence. How to purchase from them is clear. So that's in virtual events. And then we went ahead and conducted a business survey. This was different than the Jim Lee's survey, which was overall kind of showing economic trends. We wanted to understand at a much more micro level the things that we needed to do to support our businesses. And so we sent it out to 53 bars and restaurants. Those are our really frontline street level businesses, bars, restaurants, and retail that we want to make sure come out on the other side of this situation. We want to protect all the growth that we've had over the past 5 years and make sure that whenever we get on the other side of this, we're really able to continue moving forward rather than losing ground. So that was really kind of our intention behind the business survey. Next slide. So you do have this in your packet, but I'll just walk you through the findings of the survey really quickly. We sent it out to over 53 bars and restaurants. We indicated in the email that this was going to be, if you responded, you were going to be put kind of in a cohort that we looked to provide financial assistance to at some point. We really did want to look at what we needed to build to help the businesses, because we do have that ability with our reinvestment zone funds, specifically the ones that are from the municipality. And so we indicated that on the front end. We got 29 responses, so I think that's a pretty good segment. Of those that replied, 13 of them are restaurants, 16 are bars. These are non-exclusive, so we have restaurant places that are both restaurants and bars. 8 were entertainment or venues, and 5 were manufacturers. So we do have 2 breweries. We do have a beauty salon that actually produces lotions and things like that. So we consider that manufacturers. When asked why they closed, 8 said they were still open, 7 closed voluntarily, and 14 were forced to close with the order. We looked at business gross income so we could understand the impact of this kind of real micro economy that we were looking to support and really kind of get involved with some policies. And so the combined gross income for 2019 from all these businesses was $33,889,822. On average, with the number of 29 that responded, we have about 1.2 million, and the range was anywhere from 28,000 to 10 million. Gross income from those businesses. We then asked the question, what was the loss in revenue for March? So March 2019 to March 2020. Of course, we had almost half of March normal, and then the other half of March was not. And there was a loss of $2.3 million in revenue. Now, this is not net operating income. This is just gross revenue. But you can see that there was a tremendous impact on just those few weeks that the way that we did business changed. We then wanted to find out what we were doing to the workforce in the downtown area. So we asked about total employee count before coronavirus. There were 718 employees from those 29 businesses with a combined monthly payroll of $975,000. As of April 2nd, which was the date that this survey closed, there was only 198 people still employed. So I want to kind of caveat that and say that I think that that number will change again when the PPP, when we see that kind of come into play. So people are going to be allowed to kind of bring people back on and provide them payroll. So that will be nice for that period. But essentially only 28% of the downtown workforce, these frontline workers, were still employed. 172 of them were laid off, 368 were furloughed, 10 quit voluntarily because they didn't want to be on the front lines anymore, essentially. We then asked if operating at a loss due to coronavirus, if you're operating at a loss but due to coronavirus, but you're still paying employees, how are you funding that gap? 9 were paying it out of their own pocket. 13 were paying it from their liquidity and cash reserves, and 7 said other that they weren't. Some said that they weren't paying it. So that's how that played out. 46% of those employees previously mentioned had dependents. So we can see that there's some impacts. There's some individuals that were being supported that their household situation may be changing. Next slide. Then we really switched to a dynamic that kind of asked overall about the health of the business. And so we asked how many weeks to close if restrictions on business operations remained in place without any further financial assistance. The average was 6 weeks. It ranged anywhere from 0 to 12 weeks. So we can see that the assistance that has been provided by the federal government hopefully extended the life of some of these businesses, but things were looking pretty short for their ability to stay in operation. We asked about their alternative financing options. 37% had short-term business, right, relationships with banks. 33% had different lines of credit. 7% had bridge loans. Nobody had been able to get that business insurance claim. So we have that listed here, and we're gonna elaborate on that here shortly as well. 15% had their private lender, and 33% said an owner's loan was how they were, that was an option for them. We then asked their top 3 concerns over the next 6 months. You can see the biggest concern was 74% were worried about a decrease in consumer confidence and consumer spending. 59% were worried about having to shut down completely or depleting their liquidity and cash reserves. 48% were worried about short-term working capital needs. 15 were worried about employee morale, and 11 were worried about just general workforce availability. We then asked the question, if we wanted to know if people had recently made expenditures in anticipation of the upcoming season or purchased inventory, because we know this hit right coming into our peak season for our downtown area. So 93% of those that responded did say that they had made some sort of purchase or improvement in anticipation for the upcoming season. So there were expenditures that they had recently incurred. And of that, 66% were concerned that that inventory was going to expire before they could use it. So we could see a large portion of that was food. Was a big concern. We then asked to kind of gauge their temperature on the different types of assistance that were going to be available. 66% were interested in the EIDL, the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. 52% were interested in loan deferment, but we think that's for those that have an SBA-backed loan, so we think that they may have misunderstood that question. So with our second round of questions, we're going to try to drill down on that a little bit more. 90%, everyone was interested in stimulus funds. 66% unemployment, 69% were interested in sales tax assistance, and 90% again were interested in local funds if they became available. Currently, 93% of them plan on reopening at their current location. So we think that that's a positive indicator. And then finally on 18, we asked, we've been doing a lot of research on best practices, what programs are going on in what communities. And so we asked between alternative employment, there was 14% interested in that. Workforce retention grant, 62% were interested in that. Working capital loan, 34%. Of course, people love grants, so that's a little bit more popular. And then a working capital grant, 86% were interested in a working capital grant.
Alyssa.
So, sorry.
Alyssa, this is Joe.
Hi, Mayor.
What? Describe to me what you mean sales tax assistance.
So the state comptroller's office offered a temporary deferral for the month of March.
For
Jason, you go ahead.
Yeah, so the Texas Comptroller was offering your sales tax that you accrued during March of 2020, and you have to pay it in April. So they were offering like a deferment or a payment plan on that if you needed it.
the comptroller offered that?
Yeah, the state of Texas Comptroller.
Well, that sounds like a slippery slope to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's money that the consumer pays that goes to the state. I mean, that'd be like me not sending in withholding for my employees to the IRS. It's not the retailer's money.
Well, and one of the things that's happening, Mayor, is that there'll be this.
They think sales are going to get better in April and May. I mean, they're building a mountain they can't climb.
Right. Mayor, one of the things that's happening is that sometimes we'll discuss a potential policy on the front end, and then when going through the exploration of it, we realize that it's not viable. So I think at the time that we conducted this survey on different calls, we're also on a Main Street call every week with all of the other downtowns in the state, even the much smaller ones. So this may have been something that they were discussing on that front end that hasn't really panned out as a strong one. We haven't really heard much more from the comptroller's office about it. So They probably arrived at the same conclusion you did about it.
Okay, thank you.
Extended it. As far as I know, as of end of last week, they haven't extended it for April sales tax.
Okay, next slide. Did anybody have any questions about the survey before I move on?
Alyssa, this is Everett. So did you indicate that you will be going out and taking another survey in the future, or that they'll be conducting another survey to just compare changes from March maybe to April?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We've learned, again, the situation is just so rapidly developing, and the dynamics, they really change. So we've learned a lot of questions. I mean, as soon as we put this survey out, we realized there was a whole nother series of questions that we could have gotten better information on. So for the 29 that responded, we've basically asked them to participate in subsequent surveys. And so we're really going to be collecting data from this group pretty regularly. We already have our second survey kind of questions ready to go out here by the end of the week. And we're going to ask specifically the loss of April over April. I think that's one of the clearest ones that we can have. But, you know, some of the other things, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but one of the other things is that we found that the majority of them were applying for PPP, which is great, but then we've now found that some people who applied for PPP didn't get it. So we'll need to go, and that'll be another question that we ask during this next round of surveys, to really find out what the status of each of them is at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, if there are no other questions on the survey, I'll kind of move on. I'll move on to the next slide. Just to kind of give you guys an orientation to some of the programs that we explored based upon best practices. We looked at some sort of alternative employment program. We got that idea from Austin. It seems like their clean team they basically expanded their clean team. There wasn't a lot else for them to do right now. So they actually hired a lot of the furloughed employees from South by Southwest. So we have essentially looking at something along those lines. We looked at doing some sort of workforce retention grant. For a brief period, it looked like there was potentially a gap in the PPP that we were going to be able to provide some matching funds, essentially, for those that had gotten that financing secured. The rules for the PPP then changed again, and that gap was eliminated, so we didn't see that as the necessary use of those funds at that time. And then we looked at a workforce retention loan. But again, as the PPP expanded and there wasn't really a gap, it didn't seem like this was the time to spend our dollars, you know, our limited dollars. We certainly want to keep this group as the cohort that we protect if it comes to a point that we need to spend these local dollars. But I think everyone's priority is to use other people's money first. So the federal programs, as those come down the pipe, we want to make sure that we're aggressive in securing that, SBA loans, things of that nature. So the federal programs fill that obvious emergency need, and so we're moving on essentially into phase 2. Next slide. So this essentially kind of reiterates what I mentioned about establishing that cohort with those 29 businesses, continuing to collect that data. Some of the questions we're going to ask are what expenses are not covered in this financing that you've secured. We want to know how much debt they've assumed, because in this instance, people might be going out and getting different loans, different types of things, but we want to make sure that their business can repay that loan over time, and that we don't basically have our businesses assume too much, and then when we get on the other side of this, be unable to open back up because they have no more capacity. One of the other questions in talking with our businesses, we have a few of these new businesses that the owners haven't necessarily stabilized yet, and so we want to know if somebody has, you know, just invested their life savings in a business, haven't collected a salary, and now this is compounding the situation, because we don't necessarily see that as a recipe for success in getting to the other side of this. So we will need to know if we need to kind of triage those a little bit more. Additionally, we're looking at some improvement projects. This is being discussed pretty regularly, really trying to get our downtown in a good condition, make it sparkle. There are some components of it that are a little bit tired, things we haven't really been able to get to since we've been kind of so busy trying to move forward. And so, you know, is there some housekeeping stuff that we want to do in that time period so that it really is a pristine district whenever we come back and come back into operating it normally. Some concerns that we have, we've received reports of the increased homeless population. So our clean team is still out and operating. They're essential. They're keeping the district clean, sanitizing, you know, our fixtures and our benches, and we're just making sure the place still looks orderly. But they're seeing an increase in homeless individuals. The homeless are more aggressive also. So we're in communications with PD. We discussed this at our board meeting, trying to make sure that we keep it a safe situation. In other downtowns, not ours, but in other downtowns, there have been issues and incidents that the clean teams are experiencing. So we're going to keep an eye on that to make sure that that's something that doesn't happen here. And then, of course, our hotel market slowdown is a concern. Those are our largest valued properties, some of our largest valued properties in the district. We have about 5 right there on the shoreline, especially with the new Marriott Residence Inn. So that's something we really didn't touch on at this point because we were really looking at the front line, the street level entertainment businesses that make up that flavor of our district, where we get that, experience, and the revitalization kind of thing is most obvious. But we really are going to need to come up with some sort of strategy related to the hotels in the downtown area, because those are really key to our operation. And then next slide. And so then in phase 3, just some concepts this is again the recovery phase, looking at aggressive advertising. We had purchased some ads for Art Walk, and I don't know if any of you have seen them, but we immediately switched that to support local downtown businesses, pick up curbside commercials. So we'll potentially start doing that when we get to the other side of this much more aggressively. We had some suggestions about some sort of rideshare campaign, trying to get people to the downtown area safely and get them back home again. That might be a way that we encourage that. And then we're also aware of some transit challenges in that capacity. So that's really kind of where we are planning-wise related to phase 3. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Alyssa, I have a question, and we may cover this on the next session or the section. The projects that we have in place right now, have you seen any of those projects that have been that have stopped, that are altered in terms of the time frame of completion, because of what we're going through?
Yes, sir. Well, Jason will provide an individual update on each of our projects, but we are seeing delays in a few of them. We have not seen any project yet officially cancel. But we are, the environment is completely changed now. So, if somebody was opening up a bistro like we see with Muse, they're going to have to wait until dining rooms can even be open in order to be able to do that. So, and then we have the issue of people wanting to conserve their funds without knowing how long it's going to last. So some of that is being slow walked right now. We haven't heard anything negative we haven't heard anything about canceling from the 600 building. Of course, they're in New Orleans, and that's one of the really hard hit communities. So we're really just right now kind of checking in with them regularly, trying to pray for their safety so we can get to the other side of this and continue with the project. But at this point, we have no confirmed cancellations.
So I'm sure we're going to have to start looking at possibly extensions on those projects.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions? Seeing that there's no other questions, let's go ahead and go to the next presentation, which is an update on Tirz 3 approved programs and initiatives.
Mr. Alanis, are you ready?
Yes. He's loading the presentation.
Okay.
All right. Hello, good morning, board members. Jason Alanis, Real Estate and Main Street Manager. The next item that I'm going to provide is the Tirz projects update. So this will be, I'll go through the active Tirz projects, and then all the other ones that are in queue, I can answer any questions on those. So the first project is the Ward Building, which, next slide. So this was the historic mixed-use redevelopment. They have stabilized the roof after they replaced it. The design plans are complete, and the general contractors are bidding on the project with an expected construction to begin by the end of May. Next slide. The next project is the Limerick Apartments. So this was the renovation of 29 apartment units. The main electrical work is nearly complete. The HVAC systems and windows are installed. The interior units are currently being finished out, and the parking lot has been repaved. So this one has a performance deadline of August 31st. I'm excited to report that the contractor does anticipate to complete this one earlier. They're ahead of schedule right now. Next slide. The next project is 807 North Upper Broadway, which was the renovation of the vacant historic building known as which was the former HEB headquarters, and they'll be turning that into corporate offices and leasable office space. They have demoed the old sprinkler pipes and electrical systems, or it's near completion, and then the MEP, which is the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. The rough-in work has begun, so they're just installing the framework for that stuff. Next slide. The next project is the K-Space Contemporary. So this was an interior finish out and a streetscape project. The interior work is complete, but they're still awaiting their final CO inspection. They had a sprinkler head issue, which they did get resolved, so they're waiting on their final for that. And for the streetscape, the new door has been completed. They were going to paint the exterior, which they have already purchased supplies, did some prep work on that. K-Space volunteers were going to paint the exterior at the end of March, but that has been postponed due to the stay-at-home order and the precautionary measures. Next slide. This next project is the Americano Properties. So this was a streetscape one with a full exterior renovation and sidewalk repairs. And they have begun demo and prep work of the old facade. So they started on the back and the side, and the awning has now been removed, which they'll be replacing later. Then the next slide. This one is Dusty's Taco Shop. So this is the renovation of the vacant building right there where the star is, next to the former Aria building, which will be turned into a taco shop and bakery. This project is on hold until the Americano Properties facade is complete, which was the previous slide. This is the same developer. Next slide. The next project is Aka Sushi. So this is the relaunch of Aka Sushi as a two-story restaurant, and this was a streetscape project. The exterior work is near completion. It should be done by the end of this week, I'm told. And so the exterior will be complete, but they're still working on the interior renovation. So they still have a little bit of time left on that. Next slide. And this one is the Downtown Carwash Club. So it was the adaptive reuse of the vacant motor bank into a membership-only drive-through car wash. The landlord has removed the drive-through bank deposit concrete islands, and the tenant, being the Downtown Carwash Club, has begun installation of the new wastewater line. However, they have experienced some delays due to COVID-19, and they will be one of the projects that will be requesting an extension on their project. Next slide. The next one is Muse Bistro, which is a renovation of a vacant restaurant space into a chic casual restaurant with some retail merchandise. The work has been halted due to effects of COVID-19, and this is another project that they will be asking for an extension on. Next slide. The last one is the Goldfish Bar. So this was the relaunch of the Goldfish Bar as a backyard feel. This was a new owner that purchased this business. And this is a streetscape improvement. So the facade improvements included landscaping, a mural, LED blossom tree, and artificial turf. This project has been completed, and the developer is preparing reimbursement documents. So this one will be ready to launch once we get back to a sense of normalcy and the ability to visit this place. Next slide. So we wanted to compile, just to kind of give an overview of the residential projects that are in the works. Starting on the left was the Limerick Apartments, which I did go over. So these would be considered workforce apartments. And the approximate rent for these are about $1 a square foot. Again, this is what the developer believes that they're going to market this as, plus or minus. It's not set in stone yet, but that's what they're leaning towards. The next one is the 600 building. So this one will be considered luxury apartments at 131 units, 5 of which would be penthouse suites. And the approximate rent on these is about $1.80 a square foot, which is comparable with the Cosmopolitan. And those rates just depend on size and the level that you're on. The last one is the Ward Building. Those will be 8 apartment lofts on the 3rd floor. This is a mixed use, so it'll be retail, rentable art studios on the 2nd floor, and then on the 3rd floor will be 8 apartment lofts. And this one will be approximately about $1.50 a square foot, plus or minus. This is in line with the Nueces Lofts, which is across the street. And so you had asked about potential projects that might have some delays. The 600 building, that is still going forward. They're working on an appraisal right now. So their construction timeline is, they're supposed to be complete in about 2.5 years from now. So fortunately with that, they feel, and I feel that too, that they'll be on the other side of this, of the effects of COVID-19. Currently, they're working on their appraisal, which is required for their conventional loan. And they're working on the details of that. They're gathering some additional market data for the bank so that they can help close that loan. Another one that has been affected, it hasn't been, we haven't been told that it's still moving forward, but it's been halted severely right now, is the Hilton Garden Inn, which is the Sea District Hotel that will be between Rooster Street Ice House and the Hook Stadium and Water Park. That one had been moving along, but after COVID-19 happened, there was supply chain issues with China that they would need to get some things. There are architects and engineers that are in Dallas and some out of state that are kind of those companies have kind of come to a halt, or it's just been way more difficult to coordinate when you're not in person on those projects. So that one is currently simply on hold. Be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Seeing that there's no questions, I'd like to go ahead and proceed to the identify future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items that need to be added? Okay, seeing that there's no future agenda items, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you.